Slowdive's record Souvlaki is one of the greatest records to have ever been released in the history of England. It is one of the most important records of the 90s. It is one of the most personal records that any listener will ever encounter in their lives. It can change the life of someone that's already well versed in violently good progressive metal and rock, and yet it is a record that I don't go back to much anymore. I might play Dagger a lot on my guitar because it's so easy to play, but let's try to think about why it is that a record that's so transcendental can also be so fleeting to a listener. Unlike a record like Discouraged Ones by Catatonia, which is a record that you will go back to many times over in your life, and it will mean a lot to you still. And all you need to do is just find the headspace, find the right moment, find the right depression, and you'll be right on track to enjoy Quiet World once more. This record, it's not like that. This record is different. Even though Catatonia does have headspaces that you could relate to adolescence, to youth, to early adulthood, real early adulthood. I mean, 21, 20s, like not a 24-year-old. You know, these are softer headspaces than that. These are developing kids, almost children, or maybe that could be one of their aesthetics. It is maybe one of their goals within their music to make it childlike. But I do think that the song Allison, out of the 4 songs that carry this record, it's basically Allison, When the Sun Hits, so like Space Station, Dagger. I think Allison would be the best song. Allison has this incredible capacity to make me feel like I've heard it before I was born. I know the song. I'm just returning to it. This is probably the most intense sensation that I can experience while listening to this record. And I've listened to it so many times that I think I haven't missed anything. Especially because it's so meat and potatoes. It's not moving backwards. It's not a record you need to listen to over and over and over again to understand every single moment of nuance. No, it is straightforward record. It is uplifting, at the same time depressing, at the same time nostalgic, melancholic. So many of these adjectives can be applied to almost any good record. Almost all good records can be melancholic, can be transcendental in this sense that I'm returning to this song. But there's no song in this world that has given me the same sensations that I can find in songs like When the Sun Hits and Allison especially. So these songs really do have a flavor to this transcendentalness that is not to be found elsewhere. As much as I think a record like Shelter by Alcest is way better, maybe twice as better. These are records written by experienced adults that were already some of the best songwriters in Europe when they were pretty young. And at this, when it comes to weighing, it feels almost like I'm being disingenuous, because I know that the guys from Slowdive were not trying to fight anyone. You could say the same about Alcest, but when it comes to Slowdive, it's even more apparent that these, unlike in Opeth and Parliamentary and all these progressive bands that are always trying to best their competition just for the sake of art. I don't say it in a negative way. Of course, it's necessary to have this competitive attitude when it comes to an elite level of music, and especially when you already release a bunch of records, and especially if you're not 19, 17. Like, I don't know how old the Slowdive guys were when they released this record, but I'm assuming not much, no one was older than like 20, 21, right? So this record really hits all the right spots when it comes to the preservation of youth, and especially your teenage years, and encapsulating it in sound. That is the best way I could describe this record. It is absolutely transcendental, but just as the nature of its music, it is fleeting. And the nature of its themes, it is a fleeting record, just like your youth. And the older you get, the more you realize how precious that youth was. That place where you can't go back to, because your skin is coarser, because you have already, your organs have already gone through 100 billion more processes than when you were 16, 17. You are a different person now. And this fleeting nature of life is perfectly encapsulated in this record, making it one of the greatest records ever. Masterclass in simplicity that isn't superfluous. It is the simplicity of this record that makes it even better. There's no clutter in it. It has a lot of songs that I do not care for, but it is also a free-flowing record that's not trying to prove anything. It is in itself a little capsule of history of early 90s England, and it should be remembered for generations to come, if those generations are to come.